20 forgotten cartoons from the 1990s. In this video, we'll uncover the hidden gems of the 90s animation era that deserve a second look. From eco-warrior superheroes to bizarre internet parodies, these shows were bold, creative, and often ahead of their time. Stick around, your favorite forgotten cartoon might just make the list and the nostalgia will hit you hard. Captain Planet and the Planeteers.
The power is yours!
Earth, fire, wind, water, heart. Do these words take you back? Captain Planet and the Planeteers was more than a cartoon. It was a movement. At a time when environmental concerns were just starting to gain global attention, this show rallied a generation to think about saving the planet. The premise was bold. 5 teenagers from around the world, each wielding a magical ring representing an element, united to summon Captain Planet, a blue-skinned eco-hero with a green mullet. Together they battled villains like Loot and Plunder and Hoggish Greedly, whose schemes to destroy the environment felt larger than life. But here's the twist. The real message wasn't about Captain Planet saving the day. It was about teamwork and personal responsibility. The show constantly reminded viewers, the power is yours. It wasn't just entertainment, it was a call to action. Why did this cartoon fade into obscurity despite its massive cultural impact? Perhaps its earnest message became overshadowed by flashier, less preachy shows. Or maybe its unique blend of education and action wasn't enough to keep up with shifting trends in the mid-90s. Still, Captain Planet was iconic. Featuring celebrity voice actors like Whoopi Goldberg and LeVar Burton, the show had star power. And let's not forget the unforgettable theme song, a rallying cry for kids everywhere to care about the world they lived in. Do you remember shouting, "Go Planet!" with your friends, or were you on the other side, rooting for the eco-villains to win just once? Street Sharks. Sharks on wheels, biting through metal, wearing jeans? The 1990s gave us Street Sharks, one of the wildest, most over-the-top cartoons of the decade. If you were into action, attitude, and extreme catchphrases, this was your jam. The story followed 4 brothers who were transformed into half-shark mutants after a science experiment gone wrong. Each shark had a unique personality and power. There was Ripster, the leader, Jab, the boxing champ, Streaks, the adrenaline junkie, and Big Slamu, the muscle. Together they fought crime and battled their nemesis, Dr. Paradigm. What made Street Sharks unforgettable was its sheer absurdity. They didn't just fight, they jostled their way through every problem. Whether it was biting through concrete or riding motorcycles underwater, the show embraced the 90s ethos of being bigger, louder, and cooler. And let's talk about the toys. Street Sharks action figures were everywhere, with chomping jaws and rubbery textures that made them irresistible. For many kids, the toys were as big a draw as the show itself. But here's the irony. Street Sharks was often dismissed as a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles ripoff. While it shared a similar premise, it had its own brand of humor and edge that set it apart. The question remains, were the Street Sharks ahead of their time or simply a product of extreme 90s culture? Mighty Max. Not every cartoon hero was a buff, muscle-bound warrior. Sometimes he was a regular kid with a magical cap. Mighty Max told the story of a boy who could travel through time and space using a hat, and somehow it worked. Mighty Max followed the adventures of Max, a sarcastic, wisecracking teenager who discovered he was the Cap Bearer, destined to stop an ancient evil named Skullmaster with his loyal allies, Virgil, a wise chicken-like creature, and Norman, a Viking warrior. Max traveled across dimensions, facing monsters, myths, and mayhem. What set Mighty Max apart was its tone. It wasn't afraid to be dark. Unlike many cartoons of the era, Mighty Max tackled heavy themes like sacrifice and destiny. The stakes always felt real. Characters faced life or death scenarios, and not everyone made it out alive. Then there were the play sets. Mighty Max wasn't just a show, it was a toy empire. The small foldable play sets turned into miniature worlds filled with traps, creatures, and secrets. The toys were as inventive as the show itself, turning every fan into an adventurer. Despite its innovation, Mighty Max struggled to compete with flashier shows, and its darker storylines may have alienated younger audiences. But for those who loved it, Mighty Max was unforgettable. Do you remember the thrill of following Max through portals, or were you just in it for the playset? The Bots Master.
Bots Master. Game over.
What if robots weren't just machines? They were your best friends. The Botsmaster was a futuristic adventure that combined humor, action, and tech-savvy storytelling into one unforgettable package. The show followed Zeev ZZ Zoolander, a teenage inventor who created intelligent robots called 3A bots. Together with his robotic crew, ZZ fought against the Evil Corp, a mega corporation seeking to control the world. Each bot had a unique skill. Jam would DJ while fighting, the Nerd was the tech genius, and Cook had, well, culinary-based weapons. The Botsmaster stood out for its clever writing and humor. The banter between ZZ and his bots felt natural, and their teamwork made every episode fun to watch. The villains, led by Dr. Hiss, were comically evil, adding a lighthearted touch to the high-stakes battles. A unique feature of the show was its use of 3D effects. Special Zeev glasses came with Botsmaster toys, allowing viewers to see certain action scenes pop off the screen. It was an ambitious gimmick for its time, and while it wasn't perfect, it added a futuristic flair that fit the show's vibe. Though it faded quickly, the Botsmaster remains a hidden gem of 90s animation. Did you ever rock those Ziv glasses, or were you too busy laughing at the bot's antics to notice the 3D effects? Cadillacs and Dinosaurs.
A world where only the strong survive. A world of Cadillacs and Dinosaurs.
Dinosaurs and classic cars might sound like a strange combo, but in the 1990s, it made perfect sense. Cadillacs and Dinosaurs brought post-apocalyptic adventure to Saturday mornings, blending action, nostalgia, and a touch of environmentalism. The story was set in a future where humans and dinosaurs coexisted after an ecological disaster reshaped the Earth. Jack Tenrek, a mechanic and eco-warrior, used his vintage Cadillac to protect both humanity and the environment from greedy poachers and marauding creatures. Alongside his partner, Hannah Dundee, Jack navigated a world filled with danger and intrigue. What made Cadillacs and Dinosaurs stand out was its world building. The show combined sleek 1950s car culture with prehistoric wilderness, creating a universe that felt both retro and futuristic. The dynamic between Jack's rebellious nature and Hannah's intelligence kept the story engaging, while the dinosaurs added an element of unpredictability. Though it had a cult following, the show struggled to find mainstream success, possibly because it catered to an older audience than most Saturday morning cartoons. However, its message about protecting nature and respecting the past gave it a depth many other shows lacked. Did you ever imagine yourself cruising in a Cadillac through a jungle filled with dinosaurs, or was the concept just too wild to wrap your head around? Biker mice from Mars. What do you get when you mix motorbikes, alien heroes, and rock and roll attitudes? You get Biker Mice from Mars, one of the most over-the-top cartoons of the 1990s that somehow made space rodents riding motorcycles seem like the coolest thing ever. The story followed three anthropomorphic mice, Throttle, Moto, and Vinny, who fled their war-torn planet, Mars, to land on Earth. Once here, they teamed up to fight against the villainous Plutarchians, a greedy alien race bent on draining Earth of its resources. Armed with motorcycles, advanced weapons, and endless charm, the biker mice brought justice wherever they roamed. What made the show unforgettable was its unapologetic attitude. Each character had their own brand of cool. Throttle was the fearless leader, Moto had a cybernetic arm and a soft heart, and Vinny was the wild, self-obsessed daredevil. Together, they were the ultimate trio of 90s anti-heroes. Pop culture loved biker mice. From their witty one-liners to their action-packed chases, the show struck a chord with kids who wanted their heroes a little more edgy. And of course, the toys were a hit. Every fan wanted their own mouse on a bike. Despite being overshadowed by similar shows, Biker Mice from Mars captured the rebellious spirit of the decade. Did you root for these intergalactic bikers, or were you too busy trying to imitate their slick moves? Denver, the Last Dinosaur. He's Your Friend, and a whole lot more. If you grew up in the 90s, chances are you still hummed the theme song to Denver, the Last Dinosaur, a show that mixed prehistoric charm with modern-day fun. The series revolved around Denver, a friendly green dinosaur who was accidentally hatched by a group of California teens. Together, they helped Denver navigate the modern world, protect him from greedy scientists, and of course, have adventures that only a dinosaur could make possible. Denver wasn't just a dinosaur, he was a symbol of friendship and fun. The show tackled everything from environmentalism to the value of of teamwork, all while keeping things lighthearted and adventurous. Denver could skateboard, play guitar, and even dance, making him the ultimate 90s cool kid trapped in dino form. What made the show special was its blend of comedy and heart. Denver was more than a mascot. He was the friend everyone wanted. His curious and kind nature made him endearing, while his slapstick antics brought the laughs. Though it didn't last as long as some other cartoons, Denver left a lasting impression. Do you remember wishing you had your own dinosaur buddy to ride into the sunset with, or were you just there for the catchy theme song, Double Dragon?
To be a dragon, you gotta be strong. Humble, never bragging.
When video games ruled the 90s, few titles were as beloved as Double Dragon, and its cartoon adaptation gave fans more of the action they craved. But instead of just being a simple beat-em-up, the show dove deeper into the lore of the Lee brothers and their battle against evil. Billy and Jimmy Lee, martial arts masters and sworn protectors of the Dragon Dojo, took on the Shadow Warriors, led by the ruthless Shadow Master. The stakes were high, with the brothers wielding the mystical power of the dragon to protect their city and loved ones. What set Double Dragon apart was its intense action. Every episode was packed with fast-paced martial arts sequences, dazzling energy blasts, and dramatic showdowns. Kids loved the combination of fantasy and street fighting grit, making it a perfect extension of the arcade classic. The show also introduced a host of memorable allies and villains, adding depth to the brothers' world. Whether it was their mentor, the old master, or the cunning shadow boss, each character brought something unique to the story. Though the series didn't last long, it cemented Double Dragon's place as more than just a game. It was a full-blown franchise. Did you ever try to master the Lee brothers' moves after watching an episode? Or was the Shadow Master just too intimidating? SWAT Kats, the Radical Squadron. When it comes to badass duos, few can top SWAT Kats. The Radical Squadron, a cartoon that took feline crime fighting to a whole new level. Combining high-octane action with cutting-edge tech, this show became an instant cult favorite. The series followed Chance T-Bone Furlong and Jake Razor Clausen, two ace pilots turned vigilantes after being kicked off the police force. Operating from a secret hangar, they piloted the Turbo Cat, a state-of-the-art jet, to protect Mega Cat City from monsters, villains, and corrupt officials. SWAT Kats stood out for its gritty tone and stunning animation. The aerial dogfights and intense battles felt more like a blockbuster movie than a Saturday morning cartoon. The Turbo Cat wasn't just a jet, it was a character in its own right, packed with gadgets and weapons that kept kids glued to the screen. The villains were equally memorable, from the sinister Dr. Viper to the supernatural Passmaster. Each week, the SWAT Kats faced threats that felt genuinely dangerous, giving the show a sense of stakes rarely seen in other cartoons. Despite its popularity, the show ended prematurely due to budget cuts. But for fans, its mix of action, humor, and heart remains iconic. Were you cheering for T-Bone and Razor to save the day, or were you just there to see the Turbo Cat in action? Pirates of Dark Water.
It's high adventure with the Pirates of Dark Water.
A world consumed by an ominous substance called Dark Water, a hero on a quest to save his homeland. Pirates of Dark Water was one of the most ambitious and unique cartoons of the 1990s, blending high seas adventure with fantasy in a way that felt ahead of its time. The story followed Ren, a young prince, as he sought the 13 treasures of rule to banish the dark water threatening his world. Alongside his motley crew, Tula, a warrior, Iaz, a gruff pirate, and Niddler, a monkey bird. Ren faced countless dangers, including rival pirates and mystical creatures. What made Pirates of Dark Water stand out was its detailed world building. The exotic lands, intricate ships, and terrifying creatures felt like something out of a fantasy epic. Each episode expanded the universe, pulling viewers deeper into Ren's quest. The show's tone was darker and more mature than most cartoons of the era, with themes of sacrifice, loyalty, and courage woven into the story. Its serialized format was rare for 90s TV, giving it a sense of continuity that kept fans invested. Unfortunately, the show was cut short before Ren could complete his quest, leaving fans with unanswered questions. But its legacy endures as one of the most innovative cartoons of the decade. Did you ever imagine yourself as part of Ren's crew, searching for the treasures of rule? Or were you more captivated by the mysterious Dark Water? Reboot.
For sure, but I intend to find out. Reboot!
Do you remember the first time you saw a completely computer-animated TV show? Reboot wasn't just a cartoon, it was a groundbreaking leap into the digital age. Premiering in 1994, it transported viewers inside a computer system called Mainframe, where every pixel felt alive. The story followed Bob, a guardian tasked with protecting Mainframe from viruses like Megabyte and Hexadecimal. Alongside Dot Matrix, Enzo, and their trusty dog Frisket, Bob fought to keep the system safe, whether by entering high-stakes games or outsmarting his cyber enemies. What made Reboot unforgettable was its innovative use of CGI. At a time when computer animation was still in its infancy, the show's visuals were jaw-dropping. It wasn't just about the graphics, though. The show's humor and pop culture references made it equally appealing to kids and adults. But Reboot wasn't afraid to get dark. As the series progressed, its tone shifted dramatically. Enzo's transformation from a carefree kid to a battle-hardened hero named Matrix gave the show unexpected depth. Fans loved the serialized storytelling, which was rare for cartoons of the time. Reboot paved the way for CGI in television, influencing everything from Beast Wars to the Clone Wars. Did you dream of living in a digital world like Mainframe, or were the creepy viruses enough to keep you out of cyberspace? Skeleton Warriors. If you wanted action, dark fantasy, and a heavy metal vibe, Skeleton Warriors was the cartoon for you. This short-lived 1994 series brought epic battles and gothic aesthetics to Saturday mornings in a way that few others dared. The story centered on the conflict between the heroic Legion of Light and the evil Skeleton Warriors, led by the sinister Baron Dark. After stealing the Lightstar Crystal, Baron Dark used its power to transform into an undead overlord, setting the stage for a fight between good and evil. Skeleton Warriors stood out for its darker tone. The heroes weren't just battling villains, they were fighting to save their very humanity. Each character had a unique weapon or power tied to the crystal, giving the battles a personal, high-stakes edge. The show's visuals were striking. The skeleton designs were detailed and menacing, while the futuristic dystopian world added a layer of intrigue. The toy line that accompanied the show was equally impressive, with glow-in-the-dark features that every 90s kid loved. Despite its bold premise, the show lasted only one season, leaving fans wanting more, but its gothic style and intense action remain iconic. Were you cheering for the Legion of Light or secretly rooting for the Skeleton Warriors to win just once? Extreme Ghostbusters. How do you follow up a classic like the real Ghostbusters? By making it cooler, edgier, and, well, more extreme. Extreme Ghostbusters brought the iconic franchise back to life in 1997, introducing a new team and a fresh spin on ghost hunting. The series followed Egon Spengler, the last remaining member of the original Ghostbusters, as he trained a new generation of recruits. Kylie, the goth expert in the occult, Eduardo, the sarcastic skeptic, Garrett, the thrill-seeking jock, and Roland, the tech genius. Together, they battled an array of terrifying spirits threatening New York City. What made Extreme Ghostbusters unique was its willingness to explore darker themes. The ghosts were genuinely creepy, and the stories often dealt with fear, loss, and redemption. The diverse team also resonated with a new generation of viewers, reflecting the changing times of the late 90s. The show maintained the humor and heart of the original, while upping the stakes with better animation and more intense action. The proton packs and ghost traps got sleek redesigns, and the gadgets felt cooler than ever. Though it didn't last long, Extreme Ghostbusters proved that the franchise still had plenty of ectoplasmic energy left. Did you join the new team on their ghost hunting adventures, or were you too scared of their ghoulish foes? The Tick. Evil beware, we have waffles. With its absurd humor and unforgettable catchphrases, The Tick was the ultimate parody of superhero tropes. Premiering in 1994, this cult classic delivered laughs, action, and plenty of zaniness that only the 90s could provide. The show followed The Tick, a clueless yet lovable superhero in a bright blue costume, as he defended the city from ridiculous villains like Chairface Chippendale and the evil Midnight Bomber, What Bombs at Midnight. Alongside his nervous sidekick Arthur, a former accountant turned moth-themed hero, The Tick turned every situation into chaotic hilarity. What set The Tick apart was its brilliant satire. It poked fun at every superhero cliche, from overly dramatic monologues to convoluted origin stories. The Tick's over-the-top optimism and Arthur's constant exasperation made for a perfect comedic duo. The show's quirky humor earned it a dedicated fan base, and its offbeat characters became instant icons. Who could forget Die Fledermaus, American Maid, or Sewer Urchin? Each episode was a celebration of absurdity, proving that not all heroes wear capes. Sometimes they wear antennae. Though it was canceled too soon, The Tick lives on as one of the most unique and hilarious cartoons of the 1990s. Were you rooting for justice or just there to laugh at the chaos? Mummies Alive! How do you make ancient mummies relatable to 90s kids? By giving them superpowers, of course. Mummies Alive was a wild mix of Egyptian mythology and modern-day action, bringing undead heroes to life in a way no one expected. The story followed 4 mummies: Jackal, Wrath, Armun, and Nefertina, who were sworn to protect a young boy named Presley Carnarvon, the reincarnation of an ancient pharaoh. The mummies battled the evil sorcerer Scarab, who sought to steal Presley's life force to gain immortality. Mummies Alive stood out for its creative premise and action-packed episodes. Each mummy had unique abilities and armor inspired by their ancient roles, making every battle visually dynamic. Jackal wielded a bow, Armun had super strength, Wrath used spells, and Nefertina drove their chariot, a souped-up version of an ancient Egyptian ride. The show blended humor with high-stakes adventure, keeping kids entertained while introducing them to elements of Egyptian mythology. The animation was sharp, the action sequences thrilling, and the characters memorable. Though it only lasted 1 season, Mummies Alive left a lasting impression on fans. Did you ever imagine what it would be like to have your own team of mummies guarding you? Or were you just in awe of their epic transformations? Big Bad Beetleborgs. What if you and your friends could transform into comic book superheroes? Big Bad Beetleborgs turned that fantasy into reality for kids in the 1990s. Blending campy humor with action-packed adventures that made it an instant hit. The story revolved around 3 kids, Drew, Joe, and Roland, who accidentally release a ghost named Flabber from an organ in an old haunted house. As a reward, Flabber grants them the power to become the Beetleborgs, heroes straight out of their favorite comic book. The twist? The comic's villains come to life, forcing the trio to use their new powers to protect their town. The show's mix of quirky humor and over-the-top action set it apart. Flabber, the Elvis-inspired ghost, brought endless comedy, while the Beetleborgs' armored suits and gadgets added a cool, futuristic edge. The villains, like the Magnivores, were hilariously theatrical, keeping the tone lighthearted even in the heat of battle. Big Bad Beetleborgs also had a supernatural twist, with the haunted house filled with classic monster archetypes like vampires, werewolves, and mummies. It was like Power Rangers met the Munsters, making it a perfect blend of genres for 90s kids. Though often overshadowed by Power Rangers, Big Bad Beetleborgs had a charm all its own. Did you ever imagine yourself as a Beetleborg? Or were you too busy laughing at Flabber's antics? Attack of the Killer Tomatoes.
Where will we find a place that can wear get rid of the tomato shoes?
What happens when sentient tomatoes attack? You get Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, one of the most bizarre yet hilarious cartoons of the 1990s. Based on the cult horror comedy films, this series turned the ridiculous premise into a Saturday morning staple. The show followed Chad Finletter, a teenage hero, and his friends as they fought against Dr. Gangrene, the evil scientist behind the mutant tomatoes. With the help of Tara, a tomato turned human, Chad and his gang worked to stop the invasion and save the world. Attacks of the Killer Tomatoes thrived on absurd humor. The tomatoes weren't just mindless vegetables, they had personalities, from the menacing Zoltan to the bumbling Ketchup. The show embraced its ridiculous premise, turning every episode into a parody of action and sci-fi tropes. What made it stand out was its self-aware humor. The characters frequently broke the fourth wall, poking fun at the show's own logic and cliches. It was silly, chaotic, and totally unforgettable. While it didn't enjoy a long run, Attack of the Killer Tomatoes remains a cult favorite for its sheer audacity. Did you ever find yourself laughing at the absurdity, or were you just there for the giant tomato battles? Earthworm Jim.
Earthworm Jim, the soil he did crawl. Earthworm Jim, a super ball.
A worm in a high-tech spacesuit battling bizarre villains? Earthworm Jim took one of the weirdest video game concepts of the 1990s and turned it into an equally wild cartoon series. It was absurd, action-packed, and unapologetically hilarious. The story followed Jim, an ordinary earthworm who became a superhero after a robotic suit fell from the sky. With his sidekick Peter Puppy and his love interest, Princess What's-Her-Name, Jim faced off against a rogues gallery of villains, including Psy-Crow, Evil the Cat, and Queen Slug for a butt. What made Earthworm Jim so special was its surreal humor. The show reveled in nonsense, with gags that ranged from slapstick to outright bizarre. The dialogue was packed with puns and one-liners, often making fun of its own absurdity. The animation was bright and dynamic, capturing the chaotic energy of the video games. Jim's over-the-top personality and Peter's frequent transformations into a raging monster kept the laughs coming, while the villains added layers of ridiculous fun. Though short-lived, Earthworm Jim became a fan favorite, blending 90s gaming culture with off-the-wall humor. Did you ever wish you had a suit like Jim's? Or were you just there to laugh at his misadventures? The Adventures of T-Rex. Dinosaurs in suits fighting crime? Yes, that was the premise of The Adventures of T-Rex, a cartoon that blended gangster drama with prehistoric absurdity. It sounds wild, but for 90s kids, it was just another example of how anything could become a cartoon. The show followed 5 anthropomorphic dinosaur brothers, Bernie, Bruno, Bubba, Buck, and Bugsy, who ran a nightclub by day and fought crime by night. With their high-tech suits and martial arts skills, they battled Big Boss Graves and his gang of criminal dinosaurs. The Adventures of T-Rex stood out for its unique blend of genres. It combined the noir aesthetic of gangster films with the colorful, action-packed style of Saturday morning cartoons. The contrast between the dapper dinosaurs and their gritty battles made every episode feel fresh. While the show leaned heavily on slapstick humor, it also had a sense of style that appealed to older kids. The suits, the gadgets, and the jazzy nightclub scenes gave it a vibe unlike anything else on TV at the time. Though it only lasted one season, The Adventures of T-Rex left a lasting impression with its wild premise and memorable characters. Did you ever picture yourself as part of their crime-fighting team? Or were you just trying to figure out why dinosaurs needed suits? Freakazoid.
Super team extraordinaire. Freakazoid runs around in underwear. Freakazoid.
When a nerd gets sucked into the internet and gains superpowers, you get Freakazoid, one of the wackiest, most unpredictable cartoons of the 1990s. With its zany humor and fourth wall-breaking antics, it became an instant cult classic. The show followed Dexter Douglas, a computer geek who accidentally became Freakazoid, a hyperactive superhero with the ability to do almost anything. Along with his allies, like the stoic Sergeant Cosgrove, Freakazoid took on a rogues gallery of ridiculous villains, including the Lobe, Candlejack, and Cave Guy. Freakazoid was pure chaos. It didn't just poke fun at superhero tropes, it dismantled them, throwing in absurd gags, pop culture references, and surreal humor that left viewers in stitches. The show wasn't afraid to be random, jumping from action sequences to musical numbers in the blink of an eye. What made it stand out was its clever writing. While kids loved Freakazoid's goofy antics, the show's subtle jokes and parodies appealed to adults, making it a favorite for all ages. Its unique blend of slapstick and wit set it apart from anything else on TV. Though it only ran for 2 seasons, Freakazoid remains one of the most beloved cartoons of the decade. Did you find yourself laughing uncontrollably, or were you just trying to keep up with the show's rapid-fire humor?